All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to literally look under the hood of the web. If you've ever built a web application, consumed an API, or honestly, even just typed a URL into your browser, you've triggered the unseen architecture of the internet. Today, we're going to act as senior architects and dissect the exact lifecycle of the HTTP request and response model. We'll uncover the mechanics that make websites, REST APIs, and microservices actually function.
So here's our roadmap for this architectural journey. We're going to cover the backend request flow, request versus response, HTTP methods in action, content negotiation explained, multi-service ecosystems, and finally, universal API verbs.
Starting off with Section 1, the backend request flow.
You know, it's a super common senior interview question to ask for the complete lifecycle of a request. And honestly, it's way more complex than just client talks to server. After your initial DNS lookups and TCP handshakes, your HTTP request actually hops through a highly structured gauntlet. First, it hits a load balancer, which distributes the traffic. Then maybe it goes through a reverse proxy for caching or security, down into the application server where your code actually runs, and finally reaches the database or cache. Only then is the response generated and sent all the way back up that chain.
Moving on to Section 2, request versus response.
HTTP follows a really strict request-response communication model. The client always initiates the action, always. A request has to contain a method, which is the action to perform, and a URI, which is the exact resource being requested. The server, on the other hand, strictly concludes the transaction. It takes that request, processes it, and returns exactly one HTTP response. And that response is characterized by a status code telling the client what just happened, and often a response body containing the data you asked for.
Okay. Section 3, HTTP methods in action. This is where it gets fun.
First up, we have GET. The GET method is purely for fetching data. We consider it a safe operation because it absolutely shouldn't modify anything on the server. Now, a quick pro tip here regarding a very common API anti-pattern. While the HTTP spec technically doesn't forbid a GET request from having a request body, you really shouldn't do it. Most clients won't even send one, and a lot of servers will just straight up ignore a body attached to a GET request anyway.
Next is POST. And here is a frequent mistake, even in senior interviews. People will say, POST always creates a resource. Actually, scratch that. It's not entirely true. While POST is definitely used a lot for creation, its true definition is to process this request. It's your generalized processing method. It can trigger actions, kick off background computations, or handle really complex operations that just don't neatly fit into the other verbs.
Then we have PUT. You can think of PUT as the heavy-handed method. It's used exclusively when you want to replace the complete resource at the target URI. If you send a PUT request, the server is expecting you to provide the entire, completely updated payload to overwrite whatever is currently sitting there. Now contrast that immediately with patch. If PUT is a bulldozer, patch is the surgical instrument of HTTP methods. Instead of replacing the whole document, patch updates only the specified fields within a target resource. You are literally only sending the data that actually needs to change. So, what does this all mean? The absolute crucial point here is understanding the architectural trade-off between these two update methods. Because PUT replaces the complete resource, it requires a full payload. That means higher bandwidth and potentially way more memory usage during parsing. Patch, since it only requires a partial payload, is much lighter on the network. Choosing between them directly impacts the performance of your application. For sure.
And we round out the core methods with delete. This one is exactly what it sounds like, an action to remove the specified resource. It represents the absolute finality in the resource lifecycle. No coming back from that.
All right, Section 4, content negotiation explained.
Think of content negotiation as a literal conversation, where the client explicitly states its preferences using HTTP headers. When a client includes a header like accept application/JSON, it's politely telling the server, hey, I'm expecting to read JSON data back from you. These headers are essentially metadata key-value pairs. They allow servers to make smart routing and content decisions before the heavy payload is even processed.
Which brings us to another extremely common point of confusion that we need to clear up right now. Content type and accept. They are not the same thing. Content type specifies the format of the body being sent right now. Like if a client sends a POST request with JSON, the content type is application/JSON. Accept, however, dictates the format the client is willing to receive in return.
So you could totally send an XML payload but ask to accept a JSON response.
Section 5. Multi-service ecosystems.
So, the way HTTP handles scale has evolved massively over the years. Originally, opening a brand new TCP connection for every single request added a ton of latency. So phase 1 was HTTP 1.1, introducing persistent connections, which let us reuse the same TCP connection. Then, phase 2 tried HTTP pipelining, sending multiple requests without waiting. But responses still had to arrive in order, which caused something called head-of-line blocking, where one slow response literally stalls everything behind it. Finally, phase 3 gave us HTTP2 multiplexing. This was a real game changer, because it elegantly solves that blocking issue by allowing multiple requests and responses to execute completely simultaneously over a single connection.
But why does that evolution matter so much? Well, because in a modern microservices architecture, the single request lifecycle we just explored multiplies exponentially. A user clicking a button might trigger a request to an API gateway, which triggers a request to an auth service, which triggers a request to a user service. You get the idea. Every single network hop is its own complete HTTP request and response cycle, subject to the exact same latency, timeouts, and potential failures.
Finally, Section 6. Universal API verbs.
To wrap up our explainer today, HTTP relies on a very strict request-response model. The specific HTTP methods get, post, put, patch, delete, they drive the action and communicate exactly what you want to achieve. The headers carry all the vital metadata for routing and content negotiation, and modern protocols like HTTP/2 use multiplexing to keep this whole shebang running efficiently. Mastering these fundamentals is absolutely the key to resilient API design, and frankly, it's how you clear technical interviews with flying colors.
I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. We've seen how large request bodies increase bandwidth, consume more memory, and slow down parsing. Knowing that every single microservice hop adds latency, how will your specific choice of HTTP methods, like purposely choosing patch over put, and your careful use of negotiation headers directly optimize this unseen ecosystem? Every single line of code you write impacts this architecture. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a completely new perspective on the invisible machinery of the web. See you next time.